Let's add one more piece to the puzzle of the internet. We already mentioned that IP addresses are a big part of the internet. This is the unique address for every machine that's publicly available on the internet that we want to talk to. However, obviously, it's really difficult to memorize IP addresses for every single website. Imagine that all the websites that you know by heart, instead of knowing the names of these websites, you have to memorize their IP addresses. And you'll have to type an IP address in your browser every time you wanted to open one of these websites. It's gonna be a major pain in the neck. A much easier way would be to memorize the names of these websites. Now the challenge here is that computers need IP addresses to communicate. So how would my computer know the IP address of Google when I type in google.com in my browser? This is the primary job of DNS. You can think of DNS as a database across the internet that keeps track of IP addresses and their corresponding names. So think of it, for example, as a big Excel sheet with two columns. In one column, you have the name of every single website, and in the other column, you have the corresponding IP address of every single website. These databases, these DNS databases, are spread all across the internet, and each one of them would have their own IP address. One of the most famous ones, for example, is the Google DNS database, which has the IP address of 8.8.8.8. So if you go right now and ping 8.8.8.8, you will get a response from it. If you trace route to it, you will get a response from it. So when I open my browser and I type google.com, what happens is that my machine will send a request to Google's DNS and ask it, where is google.com? The Google DNS will reply with the IP address. Then my machine will communicate with the IP address of the google.com web server. The web server will hand me back the google.com website. So how do I know what DNS server am I using? Go back to the command prompt and type ipconfig/all. And one of the fields you'll see the DNS server IP address. Right now, this is the IP address of the DNS server that my machine will talk to whenever it wants to find the IP address of a website that I'm trying to visit. So in essence, that means if I change my DNS to a different IP address, my machine will not be able to find the information it's trying to fetch. It will try to communicate to a different server which wouldn't have the DNS database in it, which means I wouldn't be able to access websites on the internet. Let's verify this and see how it works. On the bottom right corner on your Windows machine, open the Network and Internet settings. And click on Change Adapter Options. We're going to be accessing the network adapter settings and changing those. Right-click on the network device and click on Properties. Scroll down to find the Internet Protocol version 4 and click on Properties. Currently, I have a setting that requires my machine to automatically find an appropriate DNS server. If I change that to a different IP address, let's say 111.111.111.111, and I save this change, this is now going to redirect my machine to a different DNS server. In this case, 111.111.111.111. So now when I ask for the google.com website, my browser is going to send a request to the 111 IP address asking it where is google.com. The 111.IP address does not have a DNS server on it. It doesn't have the DNS database, and as such, I'm not gonna get a response that says this is where Google is. And as you can see, I failed to access the google.com website. Let's go back and fix this. Going back to the TCP/IP options. And by the way, don't worry about what TCP/IP is. We're gonna be explaining this later on in the course. Let's go back and click on Properties, and now I'm going to put an alternate DNS server at 8.8.8.8. This is Google's DNS server. If I try to revisit Google again, you'll see that it works. Let's go find out why is this working now. Run the ipconfig/all command again, and you'll see in the DNS server settings, now I have two IP addresses for two different DNS servers. So what happened is, my machine tried to communicate with the first DNS at 111.111.111.111 and it didn't get a valid response. And as a result, it tried the other DNS that of Google's, and that gave me the appropriate response. Make sure you go back and change the settings back to what they were. Here's your mission for this section. Identify what DNS you're using and answer the following questions. What's your DNS IP address? Is it a private DNS or is it a public one?